Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh no, you deleted his chart.
What?
The schedule. Are you gonna tell him it was you?
O ever Immaculate Virgin, Mother of Mercy, Health of the sick, Refuge of sinners, Comforter of the afflicted, you know my wants, my troubles, my sufferings. Look upon me with mercy. When you appeared in the grotto of Lourdes, you made it a privileged sanctuary, where you dispense your favors, and where many sufferers have obtained the cure of their infirmities, both spiritual and corporal. I come therefore with unbounded confidence to implore your maternal intercession. My loving mother, obtain my request. I will try to imitate your virtues, so that I may one day share your company and bless you in eternity. Okay, so we're doing this course in ethics, and what we're trying to look at, I'm going to shift gears here because we've covered a lot of ground, so I want to kind of just make a summary and show us why we're shifting to where we're shifting. Otherwise, you're not going to understand it. We took a look already at the objections to ethics. By ethics, of course, we mean that the philosophical, and by that we mean the non-faith-based. Not talking about faith. Philosophical, rational, discovery of morality. Let me just pause in this incredible flow of wisdom that's coming forth from my visage and just make a comment. When people say that you can't rely on religion for your ethics, and they mean that it is possible to talk intelligently and ask the questions about right and wrong. Your milieu, intellectual milieu in which you're going to be evangelizing is one where people have chosen to ignore this. Ethics today, I would say, is ignored more than denied. But it's ignored and denied. But it's ignored more than denied. And it's so sad, but it's so true, that intelligent people refuse to think about what's right and wrong. Girls who are 14, who are dressed in a crazy way, and then they're told, that doesn't matter how they're dressed. An example of this, just today, or yesterday, I guess, last night in Denver, two teenage girls tried to get onto a United Airlines flight wearing leggings, I guess this yoga pant type of thing, and they were denied access because it does not match the employee, what do they call those things? Dress code. They were flying as dependents on an employee, that's how I fly. When you fly like that, there's a dress code you have to match. And leggings are not in the employee dress code for flying. Their dad got on the plane dressed in shorts, and he was allowed to board because it's okay for a man to wear shorts, but it's not okay for a girl to wear leggings. And that made a Twitter thing, and everyone's going crazy and protesting, saying that there's nothing wrong with leggings. I just think it's an interesting question. Is there nothing wrong with leggings? Is it possible to ever say, what exactly would be out of dress code? Yeah. United Airlines stood by their position and said, you don't have to like it, everybody. This is our dress code for employees, and we don't want employees to dress this way. People were upset because they said a man can wear shorts, but women can't wear leggings. Now, I'd like to first of all submit to you that leggings are different than shorts. Number one. I'd also like to submit to you that a middle-aged man is different than a teenage girl. And that a teenage girl should dress differently. Because philosophically, rationally, I think girls are different than boys. Now, it's a crazy kind of thought. But that today, you couldn't even have that discussion without being slammed completely. This was being broadcast live over the internet. I wouldn't even make comments like this for fear that people would slam what I'm saying. And, and yet you're like, how sad is that? That you would slam a person for making a rational statement. Instead of discussing the statement and saying, well, are girls different than boys? Is a 16-year-old different than a middle-aged man? Do we have a right to have a dress code? No, we don't go there. So we're in that environment. Now I choose to fortify, because the people to whom I speak are people who are looking for weaponry to go out there. So I'm forming you in this class. So I'm bringing up all these controversial subjects because I want you to have confidence in the truth. But we have to be aware that the people that are around me have silenced their minds to the great majority. You will find few people who will even be interested in having a discussion about that subject. And mostly it's because we've become numb by the entertainment around us, where everything is always good and there's no need to question anything as long as you're letting other people tell you the truth about the world. It's like a big drug. And I don't want that. I want you to be awake. And part of what I'm trying to say is that number one, when we approach this world that's ignoring denial, we suddenly have an advantage. Because by ethics, we can awaken the mind to question. And for an evangelizer, it's actually to our advantage. So instead of bemoaning the fact that, oh, nobody seems to care, nobody listens to us, blah, 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 we can actually get excited about this and say, well, cool, I've actually got something that nobody else is even trying to do. What if I could ask people questions to make them think about it? So in that case, the girls with the leggings who were denied access to the flight. So what could we do? We could say, well, what would our world look like if everyone dressed however they wanted to? So now I'm asking questions to somebody. What would it look like? I wonder what it would look, what a good dress code ought to be. Where's the limit? There's nothing wrong with leggings. There's probably nothing wrong with bikini. We just let them have a swimsuit and walk on board if they wanted to. Where would you put the line? And suddenly we're asking questions that lead to answers. But most people won't even go there with you. And there's a word for it that I love very much in English. It's called sated. Sated means that it's like when you've eaten so much food and wine that you can't even think. And that's exactly where we are at because of the information and the entertainment. There's a thing I'd love to have you watch. I think I may have done it with you already, but it's from Aldous Huxley. It's a 1952 interview with Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace is like this, famous kind of 60 Minutes dude, whatever. And he used to do he pioneered kind of like interviewing and news for the television when it was brand new.
I don't think that's the one we watched.
Cool. So I'll have to play it for you because in it, Mike Wallace is talking with Aldous Huxley. Now Aldous Huxley is kind of he's not a Catholic kind of guy, But he was basically saying our world civilization is going to come to an end and the government is going to take over. And so it's kind of a conspiracy theory kind of guy. And so Mike Wallace said, what do you mean? How will this happen? And Aldous Huxley says it won't happen from the outside. Prisons are far too expensive. You make far too many, enemies. Having to throw concentration camps. It won't be like that, he said. The ultimate revolution will be when the government so numbs people that they would prefer to be slaves than to stay free. They prefer, he says, the idea of the government will be to make people love their servitude. Love their servitude. And then they'll voluntarily want to be slaves. And Mike says, how will they do this? Aldous says, by giving them so many material things that they wouldn't want to risk losing their comfort for thought. Their minds would be unable to raise themselves to thought. And so you've got guys like Bill Maher walking around saying, there's no religion, there's all this morality. And so where's An oral person has to think, and phew, it's like someone who says, I don't feel like analyzing all these decisions that I make all the time. Yeah. Well, what I'm teaching you here in this class is that you actually can. You can think. And you can think about morality. And you're not the first one by any stretch of the imagination. You actually belong to a very, very proud history. And I'm just giving you one of those thinkers. His name is Aristotle. He lived at the year 400 BC, for heaven's sakes. And yet what he wrote was so amazing, it founded Western civilization. This book, Nicomachean Ethics, is like the book to study. This is it. This book is so important. Aristotle shapes Augustine. And he shapes Thomas Aquinas. And he shaped, who's ended up shaping you? This is like foundational for who we are. And what he says just perturbs. It just makes a lot of sense. You can say things are right or wrong. And so we said, well, first of all, those objections, and then we looked at it and we said, well, based upon what? What is an objective morality? And we said Aristotle does it. He does it based upon a thing called the hierarchy of goods. Some goods are higher than others, and that hierarchy of goods is founded on the principle of finality. Some things are more final. When you get to them, there's nothing beyond them. It's that for the sake of which. And based upon that, I have a rational, non-religious way of actually talking about things being good, right, and wrong. Right? So that's just one of them. And then, you could develop others. So we went over that. I want you to read that. And you read that in the hierarchy of goods, everything comes down to happiness. And that happiness he defines as an activity, which is absolutely like earth-shattering. Just shows you get the guy absolutely intelligent. Happiness is not a feeling and emotion, it's an activity. It's something, and then he's like, it's not an activity per se, it's actually co-commitment to an activity. Happiness is what happens when you are acting. It's not when you're sleeping. Happiness is when you're acting. And this is something that I think I want you to kind of ponder, because it's true for so many things in our life. Like, yeah, you guys could go home to Ohio, but there'd be something that would be missing. This is why you stay, even in the battle. Because you're like, this is what I need. This is, where else would I go? It's hard, but like, I would rather be suffering, and really suffering, in hardness, than rejoicing in nothingness. Because there's something amazing about getting up in the morning and praying in the evening, praying in the midday, balanced life. And what Aristotle defines that as is he says it's an activity according to virtue. And so for him, that activity is going to be the highest virtue, and that, he says, is the contemplation of truth. It's funny, because when we're listening to the monks at the table reading with Philokalia, that's exactly what they're saying. That whole thing about the spiritual life versus the flesh, what they're saying is, man, curtail the stuff of the flesh so that you can do the cool things. Like learn. And not just learn, but think about great things. Think great thoughts. Ponder. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I have, and I've given my life to it now. It's just one of the reasons why I don't like watching Finding Nemo. There's anything wrong with Finding Nemo? I'm like, there's so much higher things for us to do with ourselves. Just fade away. And different personalities. But when I think of like a great conversation, it's irreplaceable. When you're with someone and the two of you have journeyed together in your conversation, and you leave like more soul's being cleansed by the beauty. It's a weird thing, but just being around things that are like matter that's been pushed and worked by the mind, that I'm in the presence of truth, and in the presence of a statue. That's like an air freshener. It purifies my soul. Or when I listen to a symphony, you're alert with your brain if you know how to do it right. Again, if you just listen to the Boston Pops playing Star Wars themes, it's not quite the same thing. But if you learn how to listen to a violin, such that you can tell the difference between one violinist and the next, it's like drinking wine, it's like watching baseball. If you know how to get into the game, it's so exhilarating that it's restful. And what Aristotle was saying is, that's what that contemplation of truth means. It means living life at the highest of levels. So, after he's defined it like this, we're going to pass now. We're going to pass into the experience where we find this as 26-year-old females. Because it's just amongst us. And that is the experience of friendship. And I do this on purpose with you because it's just like a really cool part of his ethics. And it's where you see a lot of the brass tacks of morality kind of coming out. But what's important to remember is that this is book 7 and book 8, really, and book 9 of the Nicomachean Ethics. Okay, 8 and book 9, especially book 8. Well, this is book 1. So this presupposes this. And what he's trying to say is that this activity according to virtue, where does it begin? And he's going to say it begins with a friend, and it ends with God. And yes, he actually says that. The pagan, 400 years before Christ, it is possible rationally to speak about God. Aristotle actually offers 2 different proofs for the existence of one God. It's so important to know this about your heritage. Because when these atheist clowns joke around, I'm not even afraid of them anymore. I can take an atheist on and win. Because their grounds are that we can't know truth. And so therefore God doesn't exist. But if you start from the grounds that you can know truth, then God exists. And Aristotle goes all the way to God. And he's saying that let's start here to see this virtue. And then we see how friendship actually pushes us and leads us to knowing God. And then we're going to conclude at the end of the course by looking then at the act, the ethical act. So I'm going to spend just like 2 courses on this. Liddy, questions? This is a fun little summary. I love summaries. For me, it's very good. It's like, now I know where we are in the symbol of thought. All right, so you're looking here at book 8, chapters 1, 2, and 3. It's just the beginning of the thing, but it's just a really good read. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to try to read the entire chapter, make a few comments that you could take notes on, and then we'll read the next chapter. Hopefully we'll actually get through this. Brianne, would you read the first chapter?
After what we have said, a discussion of friendship would naturally follow, since it is a virtue or implies virtue.
Wait, let's just stop for a second. Isn't it cool to see how he explores with his mind? Look at how flexible he is. Aristotle's not like, this is the truth, system 1, 2, 3. He's like, it's a virtue or it's like a virtue. He's like searching. And that's so healthy for us. Aristotle's not, in other words, like, I can't be sure about things. I shan't say them. Oh, he's like, I don't know, I could be wrong, but let me advance this thought. Let me search with you. It's just cool to see that you have that freedom. It shouldn't be allowed, because in today's world, man, if you don't have the right answer, then you don't know anything. And therefore, no one can know anything. It's like, it's not about the answer. It's about looking intelligently and refining things. So, besides, and is besides.
And is besides most necessary with a view to living. For without friends no one could choose to live, though he had all other goods. Even rich men and those in possession of office and of dominating power are thought to need friends most of all. For what is the use of such prosperity without the opportunity of beneficence, which is exercised chiefly and in its most laudable form toward friends?
Beneficence. Beneficence means gifting.
Or how can prosperity be guarded and preserved without friends? The greater it is, the more exposed it is it to, the greater it is, the more exposed is it to risk. And in poverty and in other misfortunes, men think friends are the only refuge. It helps the young, too, to keep from error. It aids older people by ministering to their needs and supplementing the activities that are failing from weakness. Those in the prime of life, it stimulates to noble actions, to going together, for with friends, men are more able both to think and to act. Again, parent seems by nature to feel it for offspring, and offspring for parent, not only among men, but among birds and among most animals. It is felt mutually by members of the same race, and especially by men, whence we praise lovers of their fellow men. We may even in our travels how near
They
and
basically notice. Yeah, I don't know, the word's missing, but even in our travels, notice.
how near and dear every man is to every other. Friendship seems to hold states together, and lawgivers to care more for it than for justice. For unanimity seems to be something like friendship, and this they aim at most of all, and expel fraction at their worst enemy. And when men are friends, they have no need of justice, while when they are just, they need friendship as well, and the truest form of justice is thought to be a friendly quality. But it is not only necessary, but also noble. For we praise those who love their friends, and it is thought to be a fine thing to have many friends. And again we think it is the same people that are good men and are friends. Not a few things about friendship are matters of debate. Some define it as a kind of likeness, and say like people are friends.
Yeah, that people who are alike, that people.
Whence come to sayings like to like, birds of a feather flock together, and so on. Others, on the contrary, say two of a trade never agree. On this very question they inquire for deeper and more physical causes. Euripides saying that parched earth loves the rain, and stately heaven when filled with rain loves to fall to earth. And Heraclitus, that it is what opposes that helps. And from different tones comes the fairest tune, and all things are produced through strife.
While
Empedocles, as well as others, expresses the opposite view that like aims at like. The physical problems we may leave alone, for they do not belong to the present inquiry. Let us examine those which are human and involve character and feeling. An example, whether friendship can arise between any two people, or people cannot be friends if they are wicked, and whether there is one species of friendship or more than one. Those who think there is only one because it admits of decrees have relied on an inadequate imitation, for even things different in species admit of decree. We have discussed this matter previously.
You made it. Good job. Alright, so he dances around, and So let me break down and kind of show you what he's doing. If you want to take out your pen, I'll do it by the number of line. This first chapter, the point of this first chapter is to set up is to introduce the question. This is the beginning of book 7. So he's like, let's just start talking about it. And he begins by showing the importance of friendship. And he does so, that's lines 1 to 10. And so he says, it is most necessary with a view to living. Now, I should get your attention. Wow. Friendship's necessary. Wait a second, how do you prove that? And he goes on to prove it. It says, no one would choose to live with you and your friends. How true is that, right? Loneliness is the biggest cause of all kinds of problems that we have. And even if you were rich, in your position of office, that's when you need friends. Who would be super rich and then not have like dinners and galas and people over all the time? And he gives more examples, right? How can prosperity be guarded and preserved without friends? So if you're super rich, you don't have any friends, you're not going to stay rich for long. The greater it is, the more it's exposed to it is. And also in poverty, that need friends. So rich, poor, everybody seems to need friendship. You're starting by just saying, that's like, remember he's a philosopher, so he's thinking, he's like, all right, friendship, that's very necessary. And it's this weird thing because the rich need it and the poor need it. It's supposed to be a very, very important thing. Then he gets to line 10, and he says, again, parent seems by nature to feel it for offspring, and offspring for parents. So now he's like, not only is it something that's really important in human life, but it seems like it's something that's natural. So he's just like giving you another example. He's like, yeah, everybody's talking about friendship in life. And then even birds seem to be friends. And politics talks about friendship. This is really cool. I love that line. Friendship seems to hold states together. That's like a haunting. If I don't care about my fellow Americans being a fellow American, but I just see them as an anti-wall person, then I can beat them up and I can ridicule them and I can burn them in effigy because they're against the president who wants to build a wall. And so you're like, wow, but if we do that, then we're gonna like split in two and have war. Yeah. Where do civil wars begin? They begin when you lose friendship for the other side. So instead of like Barack Obama who says, hey, this is just what does he say? It's a scrimmage between two teams. It's just a scrimmage. The president election is just an inter-varsity scrimmage. That's what he calls the election. And then once it's over, we're all on the same team. Okay, like that's a nice idea. It's too bad that he used the reason why we're fighting so much. But the point of the matter is, that there's a beautiful line there. And lawgivers care about friendship more than justice. That police force will not hold us together if we lose respect for each other. That's Aristotle. It's so cool. So he's like showing you, like, whoa, that's really, really profound. There's a lot in this that's very important. And not only is it necessary, but it's noble. I'm at the second paragraph there. For we praise those who love their friends. Okay, so he gives all these different things. Then he's like, but there are questions about it. First question. So he says, not a few things about friendship are matters of debate. There's a lot of talk about it. So first of all, isn't it cool for us just to kind of be like, when was the last time you sat around and talked with people about what makes a true friend? You know? Here's Aristotle being like, well, they used to. There used to be debate. Because some define it as a likeness. So I'm a friend with you when I see a similarity. The more that we have in common, the easier and deeper our friendship will be. That's one theory. Then he says others say it's different. Two of the same trait never agree. What opposes helps. Different tones come to fairest tune. Right? Three's company, whatever it is. And so then he goes on and says the physical problems we may leave alone. So a lot of that's like, does that come from genes or whatever? let us examine, here he sets up the whole thing, those which are human and involve character and feeling. Namely, e.g. means example gratia. So it means like free, so example. Whether friendship can arise between any two people, or people cannot be friends if they are wicked. So the first question is, I've heard this coming from a family we know in Rushi, where they said any Catholic can marry any other Catholic as long as the two have the same faith and know what they're doing. Then it doesn't matter. You can get married as any Catholic can marry. Well, there's a philosophy of friendship. I've heard that at their dinner table. And we had a big discussion about it. And on the other hand, you've had people that say, Father, and I've had this happen many times, I've been praying for my spouse and they're not coming. So like, is there one that God has for me, just one? Or could it be anybody? Look at the different things. I could not get married to anybody but one. Versus, you can get married to anybody you want, get out there, if you're a Catholic, get a Catholic, and you're off to go. This is how they talk. Well, there it is, like even in our modern world, that same exact question. Can any two people become friends? Another one, can there be friendship if they are wicked? So the old Black Sabbath concert, ganja smoking crowd, are they real friendship? Are they real friends? No, yes, no, I don't know. Debate the question. Whether it's one species of friendship or more than one. This is a great one. You see this so many times with teenage girls. They think that friendship means that the person can do anything they want to. If I'm your friend, then I'll be there no matter what. No. I mean, you're friends, and then there's marriage, and then there's school friends and family friends. Is there just one type of love, or is there many types? And so, and then he says, we have this kind. So this is what he's going to talk about. So he starts just by talking about how awesome it is. Then he says that there's disagreement. And then he gives examples of questions. It's actually orderly. It just doesn't seem like it. Did any lines from that stick out for you? Any insights? Once you contemplate the truth, get the joy, the activity according to the highest virtue.
I had marked one about for without friends, no one would choose to live, though he had all other goods. Seems like a very, I mean, I think that anyone, like people aren't gonna argue that. I mean, they might, but like, nobody wants to say that they have everything that they want and they would be sitting in the house by themselves.
You know, I remember watching a documentary about the people that jump off the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Something like every 20 feet there's a help phone. Because you can walk across the Golden Gate Bridge and people jump off of this. There's a help phone. And the documentary was the people that are 24/7 on post ready to get the call. And they live in this little office that they stay in. When they get the call, they go forward. This lady said, I've been doing it for 15 years and I've only lost one. And the reason is, you know, if you think about it, because if you can have this consoling person who's there, you're less likely to jump. So their whole training is to make a bond. Hey, what are you doing up here? And all of a sudden it's like a friend. It's kind of cool to think about that. But to save people, you just need to be there. How about you, Bree? Maybe not.
I mean, that one,
Mhm.
but
I like the friendship seems to hold states together. That was wow.
What does he exactly mean when he says, and the truest form of justice is thought to be a friend equality?
Yeah, it's just like it's tough to translate that. You kind of sense that that's a bad translation of friend equality. No one will give you your due more than someone who loves you.
Okay.
you really want justice, like what do I really deserve? You would ask a friend. There's something about when there's friendship, there's justice. Kind of cool. Alright. So he's just set us up and it's gonna, now you see, this is what he called, in philosophy, we call dialectics. Aristotle's, a king at it. And normally in a philosophy class, I would try to do this. If there's more than two of you, it's like a class of 30. You start off by saying, what do you think happiness is? What does Oprah say it is? What does Jesus say it is? What does Muhammad say it is? And dialectics means two readings. Dia, to die, to lexio, dialect, readings. Two readings. So you take multiple opposing viewpoints. And Father Philippe used to say, like flint, you strike them against each other to spark. So you get into the question, because like, yeah, wait a second. It is true that birds of feather flock together, but it's also true that, two of a trade never agree. Well, it is the truth. And so what Aristotle did there is this, he just shows you a whole bunch, just to get you like, oh, now I'm curious. And now what he does, once you go from dialectics into questioning, which we saw he just did, so he poses the question, and then he's going to go into what's called a discovery, and then finally statements. It's the philosophical way of thinking. It's also great for conversations. Like you're just sitting there like, I don't know what to talk about. It was so boring. You can start by saying, hey, what do you think about Lady Gaga? You see people kind of do this. I mean, this is good or bad? Should we watch that? Let's say or not, show or not. And what you're trying to do is spark some intelligence, some conversation. But you start by taking a weird position. Like, I got something for you guys. I happen to think that women should run businesses. And I think that they're better and smarter at men at doing it. Okay. And then it's kind of cool because what you'll see is that like a third of humanity will follow you. And 2/3 of humanity will get upset that you ask something deep. But what you're doing there, that process is kind of cool for conversations too. You start by just throwing stuff out. Let's knock it around. And little by little, you come to a point of discovery. What you find most of the time in conversations is that it ends up being like two people. Uncle Fred and Uncle Larry. And they just keep going back and forth, and everyone else kind of gets bored, and they just go away. Play with their Christmas toys. Uncle Fred and Uncle Larry are out there, and they just keep on going. It's just like... But what they've done is they've made a journey into depth. So he's about to do that. Chapter 2. Rage.
The kinds of friendship may perhaps be cleared up if we first come to know the object of love. For not everything seems to be loved, but only the lovable, and this is good, pleasant, or useful. But it would seem to be that by which some good or pleasure is produced, that is useful, so that it is the good and the useful that are lovable as ends. Do men love, then, the good or what is good for them? These sometimes clash. So too with regard to the pleasant. Now it is thought that each loves what is good for himself, and that the good is without qualification lovable. And what is good for each man is lovable for him. But each man loves not what is good for him, but what seems good. This, however, will make no difference. We shall just have to say that this is that which seems lovable. Now there are 3 grounds on which people love.
Okay. You guys see how he's kind of like churns? So the first was what is he looking for? What's he trying to solve? What question?
What is love?
So what do we love? And he then this dialectic. Some say this, some say that. And now he's about to give his thought. Go ahead.
Now there are 3 grounds on which people love. Of the love of lifeless objects, we do not use the word friendship, for it is not mutual love, Nor is there a wishing of good to the other, for it would surely be ridiculous to wish wine well. If one wishes anything for it, it is that it may keep so that one may have it oneself. But to a friend we say we ought to wish what is good for his sake. But to those who thus wish good, we ascribe only goodwill. If the wish is not reciprocated, goodwill, when it is reciprocal, be in friendship.
Ooh, he just defined friendship. That was really big. He just said what friendship was. See, how's mine?
So
Mine just
goodwill
goes so
between
fast
between people.
when it's reciprocal. Wishing well to another reciprocally. So if I'm like, hey, you know, if there's a student and you're like, I really care about you and I really want to see you again, and then they like never respond to your texts, you wouldn't be able to have a friendship. You would wish well. But if they responded and said, I think so too and I want to come and see you, and then they did, you would have friendship. Just for instance.
Yeah, just an example. Or must we add, when it is recognized? For many people have goodwill to those whom they have not seen, but judge to be good or useful. And one of these might return this feeling. These people seem to bear goodwill to each other, but how could one call them friends when they do not know their mutual feelings? To be friends then, they must be mutually recognized as bearing goodwill in wishing well to each other for one of the aforesaid reasons.
I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on this part, because it's just cool to see how he's thinking. You know, where he comes to is what's important. Okay? And what he's saying is that, what are the aforesaid reasons? How many aforesaid reasons are there? Good. And they are?
Love of lifeless.
Oh, close. That's right around there. Keep looking, it's worth it.
Wishing goodwill for,
It's in there. It is in there. He says it. He says there's 3 grounds by which one wishes one well, for which one.
of the love of lifeless objects we do not use for friendship.
We wish what is good for his sake.
Go on above that. You missed it already. Go higher up.
If one wishes anything for it,
It is because it is boom, boom, and boom. And he puts it just like that. X, Y, or Z.
Wish what is good for his sake.
Good, right? That's true.
I already tried that one.
Line 3. Line 3.
Good, useful.
And
Good, pleasant, or useful.
the useful, the pleasant, and the good. Now he uses the same term, friendship, but it's going to look differently depending on if the thing is a useful thing, a pleasant thing, or a good thing. And when you say good, it's basically, we would say it's a spiritual good. But it's the same thing. And what is that one thing that's going to look differently in each of those 3? How do you define friendship? This is what you just said.
Wishing goodwill for another.
Why?